So 2 days ago, it was the full moon day in June. And we had quite a few nice friends here staying at the monastery, practicing together. And on full moon nights and also new moon nights, which are called Uposatha, we also do a chant called Dasa Dhamma Sutta, 10 reflections. Then one of the reflections goes like this. I'm the owner of my karma, heir to my karma, born of my karma, related to my karma, abide supported by my karma. Whatever karma I shall do, of that I will be the heir. So I suppose after we have chanted that, one of the ladies requested whether I could give a Dhamma talk on karma. So we had a Dhamma talk on karma, but we have had quite a few Dhamma talks on karma on Thursday nights. So I may not go into that at the moment because the same very group of people are still here. But I will do another time again, another full sutta on karma because it'll take more than the whole hour. But today, what I wish to talk about, because then they said that it would be nice to relate the Kamma and dependent origination. How are these two things related? Because I sort of ended towards the end of the talk with Kamma being the field, consciousness being the seed, and craving being the water or moisture for the plant to grow. So that sort of indicates that idea of dependent origination quite beautifully. So this is going forward from there. However, for this talk to be complete, it is good to, give some of the definitions and bring into mind and refresh our memory about what is karma. We hear this word in Buddhism quite a lot, but also it is in Hindu religion as well, but the understanding is quite different. It's important to know the difference between how karma is understood in Buddhism, how Buddha explains this as well. So kamma is chetanahang bhikkhave kammang vadami, the Buddha says. And this comes up in many places. If you want a reference, it comes up in Numerical Discourses, Book 6, Sutta number 63, Nibbedika Sutta. There the Buddha defines what is karma, right? What is karma? So karma is your intentional action. So whatever that you do with intention, that has consequences, is what the Buddha says, right? So, but if you're just walking at night and accidentally step on an ant and killed it, I mean, there is no karma generated there, right? So it is very important to be clear about. And one of the misunderstandings is that everybody says, oh, when things happen, especially when bad things happen, that is when we hear my karma, my karma. People say this. Whatever happens, then they say my karma. So this is also a little bit of a wrong understanding. Not everything that happens to us is karma, as a result of karma. In the sense, not a direct thing that is very personal to us, but just simply being born in the human realm, in the karma loka, and especially the human realm, then there are certain things. We will be affected by heat, by cold, by diseases, by tsunamis, by volcanoes, by wars. Some of these global things that happen are not necessarily related to my very personal specific karma, but just the karma of just being born as a human. So there are many other factors that, I mean, if you have a cold today, it's not just necessarily because of your karma, just maybe it's just too cold outside and you went for a walk without your beanie. That's all. So it's really important not to misunderstand this idea of karma and just only say that. And the other thing really important to remember is we say just karma to bad things, but good things also good karma. Why we are all here together listening to the Dhamma, why some of you came and not the others, right? Why we are interested in the path. This is also because of our good karma that we have generated, right? So this is also important to remember why we have good conditions, yeah, to practice good dhamma, to hear born at a time where the teachings, these beautiful teachings, are still available to us. Places are there for us to practice, right? All of this also we have to remember good also is karma. So this is just a very brief introduction to just what the karma is, because I am mindful that in our audience there are people who are a little bit new to Dhamma, and we are going to go very quickly into quite deep Dhamma. In fact, this dependent origination is one of the most profound teachings, the most profound teaching of the Buddha. He actually awakened to this at the night of his enlightenment. And then he thought, wow, this Dhamma is so profound. It's called Gambhiro. Right? This comes up in the Mahanidana Sutta in Digha Nikaya. And he thought, wow, this is so profound that I don't think people will understand. And he decided, maybe I'm not going to teach this Dhamma. And that is when the Brahma Sahampati came down and invited and said, but Bhante, please, there are people with a little dust in their eyes. That means there are people who are, have enough wisdom to understand this. So please teach. And that is when the Buddha taught. So even though this is quite a deep, very profound teaching of the Buddha, it is possible for us to still understand it from wherever we are. It is important. So we understand it to the amount we can for each one of us within our capacity, within the level of our practice. And that is fine. That is okay. So the idea is I'm going to go into a very practical, simple level, especially with the most new Buddhist in the audience in mind. But nevertheless, the important thing is, even though it is profound, the idea is to be able to understand it in a practical way here and now into this life. How can I use this understanding for my growth in the Dhamma, right? So this is why it is important. So even though it is profound, that is, the insight is profound, but when we understand it, even as an intellectual understanding, that is still really important for us to see how the path works, what I need to do, how do I, do this practice, how do I conduct myself, how do I apply myself into this practice. So this is why it is still important, even though it is profound. So it's important also not to be scared about it, because it's people think it is profound. Some people are, okay, dependent origination, I don't think I'm going to listen to this Dhamma talk because it's too profound for me. But the idea is, let's see whether we can understand it in a way that is still practical and simple enough, right? Okay, let me begin with a little bit of few definitions to understand. Before going into dependent origination, I'm going to do a little bit about Kamma, about Kamma. So this is numerical discourses, chapter 6, sutta number 63. I'm only doing an extract, the section on Kamma, right? So here, here I'm going to read it out, and then we will see. When it was said Kamma should be understood, the way lead, and it has actually have other bits. Let me say the full part from here. The source and origin of Kamma, and the diversity of Kamma, and the result of Kamma, and the cessation of Kamma, and the way leading to the cessation of Kamma should be understood. For what reason was this said? And the Buddha says, it is volition, bhikkhus, that I call Kamma. So this is that reference, Cetanaham bhikkhave kammang vadami. For having willed, one acts by body, speech, and mind. So remember, it's not just the body and speech, but mental kamma is also really, really important. This is where I'm going to stop here for a moment for a very practical reason, because most of us who are on the practice, we are quite good with our bodily actions, at least because we don't want other people to see us doing stupid things now that we are on the path, right? At least because of that, we are quite careful to do the right thing by body. With speech, we are trying very hard to be very good. Sometimes we lose it, but that is moderate in still trying our very best, because we also don't want to be criticized by others, and we also understand also that it is bad. But when it comes to mind, when it comes to thinking, this is where many people become quite heedless. Why? Because we think that other people can't see, other people can't know. So I can think what I like, however long I like, in whichever way I like, and that is not a problem. But elsewhere in the suttas, the Buddha says, be careful about this, Be very careful about this, because there are some beings, even some monastics, maybe lay people too, with the ability to read other people's minds, and they can know what you're thinking, and that is there. And then there are definitely also the heavenly beings, the devas. They can also read our minds, and also not only devas, some other non-human beings can also read our minds. They also know what you're up to. So that is just like other people know about it, or other beings know about it. But most importantly, let alone that, but for your own benefit, because what we think about, what we ponder, is the inclination of our mind, right? That is what breaks into speech and action down the track. So if you also want to restrain your speech and action, then we have to take care of our mind. So this is really important. So mental kamma is where we have to give priority, because the other things also result from the mind, right? So it is really important to remember that. So then the Buddha goes, and what is the source and origin of kamma? Source and origin. So now we said kamma is our intention. Now the Buddha says, what is the source? What is the origin? How does it come about? And the Buddha says, contact is the source and origin. So contact. What is contact? It is in Pali called passa. Right? So for anybody who's new, what is contact? Contact happens like this. So you have your sense organs, right? You have your eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. These are the 6 sense bases. So each 6 sense base has its corresponding sense object. Like for the eye, it's the form. For the ear, it's the sound. For the nose, the odors. For the tongue, the tastes. And for the body, feelings. And for the mind, mental objects. So when there is an eye, for example, and then there is a form, and when we give it attention to it, when we give attention to those two things, they meet. Right? That is called passa. At that point, the eye consciousness arises, chakku viññāna. Right? So that is where those 3 things coming together is called contact. Same with the sound. So we have a functioning ear, we are alive, not asleep, not dead, and then there is a sound that happens. So the moment we give attention to that, that is when the ear consciousness arises. And then when the 3 come together, it is called contact. So very important, because when contact happens, so it's, the Buddha says, it's from contact that we give a rise to kamma, right? So contact is that time, in my Dhamma talks, I usually call this is the us receiving the world. Yeah, we receive the world through our eye, through our ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, right? So wherever we are, when we experience, we have an experience of sight, experience of sound, experience of taste, touch, all of those things. So this is us receiving. So contact is the thing that triggers, because if you don't have any contact, well, nothing happens, right? We don't have to react or respond. There are the way that we deal with it. So that is why, so contact is what gives a trigger for kamma to arise. So we can stop here for a moment to understand how this happens, because this is where we can relate it to this causality of kamma coming to be. So maybe you are just, minding your own business, maybe even trying to meditate, yeah, sitting down quietly with your eyes closed in a peaceful place and just, trying to become peaceful. And suddenly you hear a loud noise. So when the noise, you hear that, or some kind of noise, maybe some people talking. So the nature of our ear is wanting to hear. It craves to hear. It is because we desire hearing that we got to hear this life. Yeah. In another sutta, the Buddha says, what is old kamma? Old kamma is our eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Why we got all of these things is our old kamma, Purana kamma, because in our past lives, we still could not let go of our interest to hear, our interest to see, our interest to taste, our interest to touch, think, all of those things. Because we crave for those things, we got a ear, eye, tongue, nose, all of those things, right? So our ear, its natural nature is it's interested. So that's why when we are supposed to be meditating, but when there's a sound, it's interested. So it gives attention to it. And once it gives attention to it, it makes that contact. And as a result of contact, what happens? So in the Madhupindika Sutta, there is that beautiful sequence, the perceptual process. How does that happen? So let me remind you again, because these things are all now really important to build up into dependent origination. So perceptual sequence is different to dependent origination, but they are similar. There are similarities. So it is important to distinguish between and also understand it in detail. So again, chakkuncha paticca rupe uppajjati chakku vijnana. That means when you have the eye, when you have form, and when you give attention to it, chakku vijnana, the eye consciousness arise, tinnang sangati passo. So the coming together is called passa, contact. And passa paccaya vedana. So what happens after you contact? As a result of contact, you have a feeling. So when you were meditating there and you heard this sound, so when you made that contact, as a result of that hearing, you started to have a feeling. It could be either a pleasurable feeling as a result of that, something you like you heard, or a painful feeling that you didn't like what you heard, or it was a neutral feeling. Whatever kind, there's a feeling. Yeah. So passa paccaya vedana. After that comes yang veda iti tang sanjanati. So that means whatever you feel that you perceive, then you start to perceive it, understand, make sense of what you are hearing. Because in the beginning, you just only heard sound. That was only sound. But it is your perception that makes those words, gives meaning to and understand what those things meant, right? What the whole context, all those perceptions for hearing, that happens as that perceptual process, as a result of perception. Yang vedeti tang sanjanati. Yang sanjanati tang vitakketi. So whatever you perceive, then you start thinking about. Okay, this is where now kamma comes into place. So up until there was only contact happening. You heard some sound and you perceived what that sound was. Once you get to understand what it was, the meaning of it, then you can start to have a reaction. You start thinking, how dare they say that? How don't they know that I'm meditating not to make sound? Something like this. Yeah, it could be, oh wow, it's beautiful chanting. So nice to hear. It's such a nice thing to hear while I'm meditating. Or it might be just the sound of some kind of very, simple noise, and that's okay. It's neutral, whatever it is, right? But you can see our natural thing, right? After we perceive, after we understand what's going on, we start to think. So already we're starting to generate karma. Now, I already explained three different types of karma, right? The first one, how dare they do that, came from craving, your sense of self, a little bit of ill will and negativity, right? So that is generating a little bit of unwholesome karma as a result of just hearing. And at the same thing, maybe somebody was complaining about something. Let's say you're meditating and you heard somebody very loudly complaining about a difficulty they're having. So you have a choice. So in one way you will, so you receive that, right? You receive that. And then as you receive that, as you made that contact, you can think, oh, and you got upset. They're complaining, it's so loud, I can't meditate. That's unwholesome karma. But as you understood, your heart gets filled with compassion. Oh, I feel so sorry for them. I want to try and help them. Or, they're going through such a difficult time, and you feel empathy and you have compassion come up in your heart. Yeah, then you generate wholesome karma as the result of the same sound, same thing that you heard. Again, it's the same exact thing, but you would think, okay, I understand this person is going through a difficult time. But you know, we understand we are the owner of our karma. So maybe out of that, experience, they might grow in their path, and this situation also will pass and this will be okay. And you sort of able to become equanimous about it. Just very briefly saying, based on the same thing that you receive, you can generate either wholesome, unwholesome, or sort of neutral karma. But of course, if you go into upekka and if you really develop that, it'll go into ananjabi even. That is the more higher form of karma. But I mean, it's not generating karma in that way, but it is more from deep meditation type of thing. But anyway, at least you can understand wholesome and unwholesome, or at least neutral. Yeah, neither black nor dark karma, because there is this bright karma, there is dark karma, there's both bright and dark karma, and there is also neither dark nor bright karma. So there are the different types of karma. So you can see how contact give rise, right? So you contacted, that is you receive it, and what is your response? So at your response is where you're doing your karma. So this is where we have to be very careful. And the word reaction and response, again, very important to remember. So reaction is your very quick, reaction. You don't really mindfully engage. It's more habitual. It's what you have been doing in the samsara, what other people do, what you see. It's already conditioned, right? Still, there is intention. Very quickly, intention comes. You can snap back and shout at them and say, "Shut up." Right? So that's your reaction. Yeah, that's the very quick one. So usually, unless we have been practicing really well, applying ourselves and changed our reactions into wholesome ones, generally reactions are coming from unwholesome roots, sense of self, sense of greed, hatred, stupidity, all of those kinds of fear, anger, all of these things is what generates our reactions in general. Not for everybody. The group here is diverse, so there will be not always. But when you say response, now response is done with mindful engagement. So this is where we have to be very careful if we are keen about doing the right kind of karma, right? Right karma, because karma only ends when we become an arahant. Up until that point, whether we like it or not, even though we understand there is nobody here, we still feel somebody here. We still feel a sense of agency here. We still have intention and we do things, right? So therefore, we have to be skillful, at least to do wholesome and to refrain and stay away from the unwholesome. So this is where we mindfully engage and generate wholesome. So for anybody who has heard the story, I'm not going to repeat it here, it's going to take too long, but that black snake story. Yeah, the black snake story, this is where it is. Yeah, when you are in front of a black snake, you have two choices. I mean, a few choices, two different types: wholesome kind and unwholesome kind. The unwholesome kind is when you see a black snake, people usually scream, freeze, run, or kill. So, all of those things will generate slightly or largely unwholesome kind of. But there is also the possibility. Okay, so there is also the possibility that we can respond to the snake even with kindness, with respect, with gentleness, with love, with care, with a generous heart, right? This is possible. That was the story there, right? So this is where we have unwholesome or wholesome. We always have a choice whenever we receive the world. So whenever we make contact by any one of the sense bases, we have a choice. It's just that we forget and sometimes not mindful enough. And we don't have enough right view to know what's the right thing to do because we have plenty wrong views. We are full of lots of kinds of wrong views. Even as we are learning right view and making it more, we still have plenty wrong views, all kinds of wrong views that you should do this and you should do that. This is the right thing to do, and that we learn from just people from greed, hatred, and delusion, just the world, the worldly conventions. They are usually based on greed, hatred, and delusion. So, but we take them. They don't necessarily straight away even seem like really bad or anything, but that's what you're supposed to do, and you do it. That's why. So, wrong view is also majorly getting in our way. So, this is why if we want to turn around and make more and more wholesome karma and stay clear of unwholesome karma, then it's not only just mindfulness isn't enough, because sometimes they're very mindful, but very mindfully we go and do the wrong thing, or sometimes we don't even know what's the right thing to do according to the Dhamma. So this is why right view also has to come hand in hand. And in the Buddha's dispensation, Samma Sati, the foundations for Samma Sati is right view and virtue, Sila and Ujjhagaditti. So that is why. So our view has to be, our mindfulness has to be right mindfulness. Then it will have right view together with it, and then we will see the wholesome way. We will be able to navigate. So this is really important because now we're interested in karma and the origin of karma, because I said we are going to talk about practical things. So this is where our work is 24/7. I mean, except for maybe when you're sleeping, every wakeful moment. This is where our work is. So remember, we are constantly receiving, holding what we receive, and respond. How do you hold it? Do you hold it with spiritual qualities or defilements? Yeah, are you holding things with anger, irritations, impatience, fear, worry, anxiety? Or are you holding what you have received with kindness, gentleness, non-cruelty, with patience, with equanimity, with peace, with joy, with happiness? There's so many options. I mean, it depends on the situation, but remember this. Anything in this Dhamma talk, if you remember, this is the most important part, right? So that is just what is the origin of karma. And then the Buddha goes into explaining, and what is the diversity of karma? So the diversity of karma, there is karma to be experienced in hell. There is karma to be experienced in the animal realm. There is karma to be experienced in the realm of afflicted spirits. There is karma to be experienced in the human world. And there is karma to be experienced in the Deva world. This is called the diversity of karma. So the diversity is where it's going to bear fruit. Where are you going to be born, right? So this is the diversity. So you can be born in any one of those realms, right, as a result. because karma is experienced as a feeling. Yeah, if it is pleasurable feelings that you get, that would be a result of a wholesome karma. If you get painful feelings, that would be a result of a unwholesome karma. And if it is neutral, it is a neutral kind of karma. So, but karma is what gets you. So, if you're going to the lower realms, that is experienced in hell, in animal realm, in afflicted spirits, or that kind of realm which is full of suffering, that is a result of doing unwholesome karma. But of course, if you are in the human realm is mixed. There is also good and bad feelings, because there are human beings who have mostly very pleasurable and pleasant abiding, and there are people in the human realm who go through a lot of suffering, and then there are also people who have both pleasure and pain. But when it goes to the deva realms, it is a very pleasurable abode. Okay, so that's the diversity. And then, and what is the result of karma? The result of karma, I say, is threefold: to be experienced in this very life, in the next rebirth, or in some subsequent occasion. This is called the result of karma. So again, in this one, the most important one to remember is the one that is experienced here and now, right, in this life. So this is called the Ditta Dhamma Vedaniya Karma. And in this one too, the one that we can experience straight away is like this. So if you snap back at somebody, if you shouted at somebody, if you said the wrong thing or lied, how do you feel straight away in your mind? Your mind is not in a good state, right? You feel the pain, the difficulty, the darkness of having done something unskillful. So that is the straight away consequence, the vipaka of that karma to be experienced here and now. It will have subsequent as well, but straight away also you have it. But good, right? If you've been generous, been kind, give a beautiful compliment to somebody, helped somebody out, said the right thing, spoke words that goes to the heart, right? Gentle and pleasing, whatever it is, yeah? So when you do that, again, you can see how beautiful your mind feels, how energetic it feels, yeah? The pleasure is experienced straight away. So that is the most important karma, anything to understand. Because the other place where people get very upset and ask, actually, some days ago when people were here for lunchtime, during lunchtime discourse, some people were asking, why is it that, some people here, we see they are really good people doing really good things, and they die young, bad things happen to them. How is this possible? And then they say there are some people who are really terrible, do terrible things to people, and good things happen to them. They seem to be living a jolly good life. How is this possible, right? Is karma really true? So this is where we also have to be very careful. The Kamma is called a Buddha Vishaya. It is actually a subject for a Buddha, because it's really complicated, because we have multiple, right, from many lifetimes. So it's a mixture of Kamma that comes to result, right? It's not just one single thing. Multiple things comes together. And it's the sum total, or like it balances itself out, and you get a result. So this is where it gets very complicated. And also some past, that karma can come, and other things also come. As I said, it's not only karma, there are other things as well. So it's very mixed. So never to think about what karma made me rich, what karma made me poor, what karma made me sick, what karma made me ugly, what karma made me this. Don't think about that. We are not going to be able to find it out unless there's a Buddha. If there was a Buddha, then he can explain. Or sometimes if you have your own psychic ability to develop the psychic ability of Pubbē Nivāsa Anussati Jnana, that is to recollect your own past lives, you may be able to. Even then, it is very complicated. It's not very straightforward. So very important. So leave that question aside. Rather, focus on the generation. How do we generate karma and its relationship? why this matters, yeah, why this matters so incredibly, enormously, because karma and rebirth is the fundamental teaching of the Buddha, right? Rebirth is ending rebirth, and what keeps rebirth going is the karmic force. Karmic force is the fuel. This is where the dependent origination is coming, because karma is not directly visible. Karma is not one of the factors of the 12 links of dependent origination, but it is very much there in two different places. But not only that, it is the one that propels the whole path. What takes us together with craving, it is the karma. Craving is what makes you to do karma. So they join forces and keeps us going. So which is why it is important to understand it is what we do now, and what we get is what is important. So like I mentioned earlier, the Buddha said our Purana karma, our old karma, it's a result of that we have a eye, ear, nose, tongue, all of those things here right now. And in Anathapindikowada Sutta, the Buddha, not a Buddha, Venerable Sariputta was giving the last discourse to this one of the Buddha's foremost lay supporter. As he was passing away, he was telling, please die without being attached to the eye, because if you die attached to the eye, you will get another eye. Please don't die attached to the forms you see. If you die like that, you will get forms, eye consciousness, eye contact, and all of those things, and talks about all the six sense bases. So this is why it's really important. This is where we can end Salayatana Nirodha Nibbana, right? The cessation of the six sense bases is Nibbana. So very profound, very important place. So this is why it is important to understand these things. Even if I run out of time, never mind. Even whatever bit we get to talk about, if we understand it, that is really important, I feel. Yeah, and I hope you agree. And then goes to, and what bhikkhus is the cessation of karma. With the cessation of contact, there is cessation of karma. So cessation of contact, because contact is what gave rise to karma. So the karma ends when contact ends. A very profound statement to contemplate. So to understand, because karma ends with an arahant, like full enlightenment. So, and we know that enlightened beings, even in their last life, after enlightenment, do not generate any karma, only actions. Why is that? Right? They still do things, right? They still have intention. They say with intention, I'm going to go to alms round to this village. I need to, go here, or get my bowl, get my robe. They have intention and do things, and they do good things too. They give Dhamma discourses, they do acts of generosity, so many things. But they do not create any karma. So, and this is the cessation of karma is cessation of contact. Interesting point, right? So interesting point. Again, the answer to this comes in this very profound discourse called Madhupindika Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 18, Honey Bowl Sutta. And there the Buddha says, that when there is no eye, when there is no form, and then no eye contact happens, then there is no besetting, like, there is no more future coming up. Yeah. And it says, so that would be an arahant. But then we see arahants have an eye. After becoming an arahant, that their eye doesn't disappear. Their physical eye, their physical ear, tongue, body, everything is intact, right? So what does the Mahakotthita actually says, and the Buddha confirms this in that sutta? What does it mean that they don't have an eye? I mean, there are forms as well. How are we to understand that they don't make any contact in this occasion? The thing is, actually, there is nobody there, right? It's only a process. The contact happens to me, right? I am there to experience it with a sense of self and with a sense of craving. Like it is because of my craving. Like we said, that it is because of our craving that we are interested to lend our ear to hear, turn our eye to look, sniff our nose to smell, and put things in our mouth to taste and go behind the touches. All of those things is because I am here and craving is there. And that is what gives that intention, attention to make that contact in that way. So it is together with craving. So when an arahant, those things come together, what is missing is craving and the sense of self, because delusion and craving is gone. Delusion is the idea of me being here, I am here, things belonging to me is the delusion that we have up until enlightenment. But an enlightened being sees this body and mind as simply process, just conditioned by the past, running its course, but there is no body there to take ownership, right? They just see the causality of all of those things. That was the profound understanding, insight that got them enlightened. So when there is nobody there and the craving has ended, because they see it is all these things are just empty, empty of a self, empty of anything substantial, and everything is transient, subject to change. So what can you hold on to? So when you see that their craving has ended, because there is no more craving, so there is no karma generation there. So that is how karma is ended. So when it is contact, usually in an ordinary being, an enlightened being, it always comes. This is why we contact precisely because of craving. But enlightened beings make a contact just out of compassion. They keep going and just to sustain this body for service, not because of a sense of self, wanting to enjoy and wanting to do things. That's the difference there as well. So quite interesting and profound point to think and understand, because that also shows us where we are heading. Yeah, how this is done. And also for an arahant, there is no more future birth, right? When there is no more birth, so all the past karma, there's no possibility to fruit, right? They can't come. But whatever past karma that can fruit in this life, they can still come to be. But they are not generating any more for future, but also the very fact that they're not going to be there in another future life, is also not going to happen. So it's interesting to understand these things, I feel. So the cessation of karma is the cessation of contact. And this noble eightfold path is the way leading to the cessation of karma. And then that is the noble eightfold path. So to end karma, right? To end this whole cycle, there is no other special different teaching. It always goes back to the noble eightfold path. The noble eightfold path is what gets us enlightened. So really important to remember. That is what we need to do. So no shortcuts. We have to do all of that. Yeah, all of that. But like in many other times during the talks, as I explained, it is not really hard, right? It is not that impossible to do, even in every wakeful moment. So this is what we do, right? So Noble Eightfold Path can be applied every wakeful moment as we receive the world. So this is the profound bit, right? This is where the path is generated. So let's see, we have an experience of sight. So let's say that black snake, right? Black snake. We have an experience of being in front of a black snake or a black snake-like situation, a scary situation, fear-triggering situation, difficult person, scary being in front of me, or a war happening or something like this. Yeah, anything. So that is what is in front of us. So that is, we have made contact. So right view comes in, right? Right view comes in and reminds us there is karma and vipaka, causes and conditions. So whatever way you're going to deal with this, you will be the heir of your karma, owner of your karma, related to your karma, born of your karma. Yeah, karma is your inheritance. So when the right view reminds you that, that is when the mindfulness comes in and you become careful. Okay, I have to make the right choice now. Yeah, you realize the bifurcation. So with mindfulness and with right view, you realize, okay, at least with karma, you understand. And you can apply many aspects of right view. This talk is not going to, this time is not going to be enough for me to say that, but it will be very beneficial as homework if you actually see for every time as I receive the world, how can I receive the world through the lenses of right view. Yeah, this is very profound, very powerful. So when you see, for example, I just mentioned, okay, just the idea of karma and vipaka itself, right view gets us to be alert, not just react in a way that is unskillful or habitual or instinct if it is unskillful. Right intention. Right intention says non-harm, non-cruelty, and nekkamma, so sense of letting go. So again, you realize, okay, whatever that you're going to respond to this, respond in a non-harmful, non-cruel way, rather with kindness, with gentleness, with a sense of letting go. So beautiful, right? Anytime, anything, as much as possible, we have a choice. Of course, when you do that, then your speech will be right. Your actions will be right. And of course, your job is something that you have to decide that you don't do break any one of those things. So that is the one that doesn't come in straight away to here. That's a decision you make separate to this. And then doing all of that is your right effort. Why? Because you are increasing the wholesome, yeah, and decreasing the unwholesome, because you're making and navigating towards making wholesome choices, making good karma. Right? So that is right view there. And in order to do that, you need mindfulness. So this is the starting point of your mindfulness, which will go all the way to right mindfulness. Right? And when you have done all of that, these 6 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path, so the ones that are not there in every day to day, every moment, every time you receive the world and respond, is your job, that is Samma Ajiva, and deep meditation, Samma Samadhi. Other 6 factors are always you can do it. So it's nice to reflect this. I have given Dhamma talks about it in great detail in the past, but again, really important. This is the most important practical bit, how we understand this, right? So then we understand, okay, this is where work to be done. So what happens then? Yeah, this is where now I'm going to relate this very briefly. So I'm going to run out of time to go into a deep discussion of dependent origination, but these are things that will probably need a few Dhamma talks to get into to proper understanding. Let's see. So based on as you receive the world and as you respond to it, if you respond with craving, coming from a sense of self, to the sights that you see, to the sounds that you hear, to the taste, smells, touches of the sensual world, right? That craving itself then creates, yeah, with the craving, because in the dependent origination, I'll start from this point because we spoke about contact. In the dependent origination, there is contact. I'll come back to the beginning. I'll start with contact. With contact comes feeling. Whatever you feel, you may be craving, and with that craving you will hold on to these things. Yeah, whatever you receive, as you receive the world, if you really like it, you hold on to these things, to these people, to these experiences really strongly. It could be a Krispy Kreme, okay. It could be anything, anything, whatever it is that you hold on to in this world, because if you are a kangaroo, can't eat Krispy Kreme, right? So Deva realm can't eat that. So they will be in the human realm. Even though it sounds like a joke, this is just making a point, right? We crave for things in the what we know. So very likely we are going to come back to these kinds of things. That is how we are stuck in realm. So kangaroos, they are stuck in kangaroo realm because they know kangaroo things. Yeah, they the kind of things they like to eat, experience, and they keep craving for that, and they keep being born again. It's so hard to break sometimes these cycles. Of course, with strong karma, I mean, some people actually start behaving almost like animals. Also in their mind states, you can see that is how they end up going into lower realms and hell realms, depending on some very heavy karma. But apart from that, you can see how whatever level that we are established in. So if most of us, if we are in the human realm, doing craving for human realm things, and we hold on to them, this is that upadana, strongly attached to these things, that creates our bhava. So then our existence is then created into the kama loka, and in the kama loka, that is the sensual world, into the human realm. But sometimes if you're practicing, then, if you've been doing devanusati, and if you've been also meditating, getting into deep meditative states and doing wholesome karma, then you may actually establish yourself into the deva realms too. So it depends, but whatever it is, wherever you are sort of holding on to, that is your bhava. Bhava means your existence. That is how it is created. So once you have bhava, then birth is inevitable. Once that is created, so this is how. So that bhava, that is where the karma is, right? That is where the karma is now generated. That strong holding on to, from that onwards, that intention creates that bhava. Bhava is that field. Yeah, the field. Bhava is called the field. Karma is also called the field. Kammanketta. Yeah. So when there is that field, then our consciousness is called a seed. The seed is then planted on that field. Yeah. So then birth happens. Yeah. So then you can see how consciousness is now in that field, depending on whether you have done lots and lots of good karma, wholesome things, then you have a very fertile field, yeah, with full of nutrients and good soil. Most good things will grow in a good way, like a big tree can grow very lush and bear many fruit. Or if you have not done good enough, like you've done lots of unwholesome karma, then your field will be quite barren, depleted of nutrients. Yeah, nothing much there. But either way, the field is like that. But then, if the seed is there, the consciousness has landed either on a fertile field or an infertile field, craving is going to come. The sky is going to rain because your craving is what got you there. So, the craving is the moisture. Like when the craving keeps watering it, the tree starts to grow. So birth happens. Yeah, birth happens, and that is like our birth. Like a tree, we also grow and then eventually bear fruit. And when that fruit falls down, that's like next birth. Again, the next type of field. Wherever the fruit goes to, gets eaten and thrown out to, that will be their field. But this is the idea of birth, right? So birth happens then. After birth, then old age, sickness, deaths, all those forms of suffering is inevitable. So that is the origin of suffering. Yeah. So why all of these things happened? Going to the very beginning of dependent origination here is the delusion. What is this delusion? Thinking that there is a being, a me, somebody who owns, somebody who is in control, a sense of self. Yeah, that is the biggest delusion of all. It is from there everything else starts. So once that sense of self is there, what does a sense of self want? It always wants things. It craves things. Yeah, craving is there together with delusion. So the moment there is a sense of self, craving is together with it. It always wants things. So due to its wanting, the next place the karma is coming is here, right here. The next second link of the dependent origination is called sankhara. Yeah, avidya pachya sankhara. So after delusion comes volitional formations. So volition itself, because it's a directly karma. There are three types of karma: Punyabhi Sankara, Apunyabhi Sankara, Anenjabhi Sankara. So Punyabhi means the volitional formations, the intentions that take you to wholesome, because punya means wholesome. Apunya means unwholesome, and Anenjabhi are the deep meditative, especially formless jhanas. Yeah, so very still. So once you have that delusion, when we crave, you could have any one of these kinds of karma generating. So that is why karma is at force together with that craving. Craving and karma keeps the whole, us in samsara keep going, life after life for eons is how we have traveled. So based on that, whenever, those karma is there, whether it's good or bad or whichever type, then consciousness continues on. Yeah, consciousness is there. That is why Sankara Pachya Vijnana. So consciousness is there. Vijnana Pachya Nama Rupa. So that is that body and mind. Yeah, body and mind has to happen because Vijnana, the consciousness, cannot exist by itself. Consciousness, the stream of consciousness is always together with a being. Yeah, it exists as a being. So Nama Rupa. So what is Nama Rupa? Rupa is just the elements, the four elements that a body is made up, the form. And then Nama is the other aspects, that is Vedana, Sanya, Vedana, Sanya, Chetana, Passa, Manasikara. So Vedana is feeling, Sanya is perception, Chetana is your intention, Passa is contact, Manasikara is your attention. Anyway, I'm not going to have enough time to go into detail. Maybe this deserves another Dhamma talk, but I'm still relating because I promised that this will be related to. So you get a body and mind. And depending on, so again, that Punyabhi Sankara, those volitions, that comes from, is the field again. In that place also, it's like bhava, right? That's the field that gets you. Whether you go, if it is a human being, what kind of family are you going to be born if you're a human being? Yeah, are you going to be born to a kind family, a wise family, a cruel family, to mafia, to rich or to poor? What type? Where you go, that is your field. Yeah, that is kind of, you're the family or the mother, the parents that you're going to be born to. That's how it's decided. And once you have nama rupa, so then there is a being. Of course, the being has the six sense bases, because that's what a being is. Being has six sense bases, and when you have six sense bases, we make contact, because craving is underlying there all the time, right? Craving is there, which is the driving force, together with karma. So you make contact. With contact comes feeling. With feelings, the real craving comes up. Yeah, whatever you feel, you either want or don't want. Not wanting is also a form of craving. And based on that, you hold on. As you hold on, your existence is created wherever you're holding on to, which kind of thing you're holding on to. And this is where, if you remember, at the time of the Buddha, in some of the suttas, the Buddha talks about, there were people who thought they could get enlightened by behaving like a dog or by behaving like a cow. And I think these, so we have to be very careful. So if you start behaving like that, if you really go into that mentality, then that is the bhava that you're going to be creating, because you crave for that, you establish your consciousness there, then you will be born. Because there were these people who are behaving like that, and they go to the Buddha because they're really sincere, very sweet, actually, sweet people. They say they want to get enlightened and they're trying to do this. And then they ask, where will we be born? What will happen to us when we die? Will we get enlightened? And the Buddha is really sorry to say this, is really because they're very sweet. And he says, but if you behave like that, your destination will be, if you're behaving like a dog, you will be born like a dog. If you start behaving and putting your mind, set it there, you as a cow, you'll be born as a cow. So then, of course, they understand and they leave that aside and come back and practice the Noble Eightfold Path. Some of the people who went to ask the question. But this is the idea. So how is the bhava created? Yeah, and once that's a bhava, the field is there, the consciousness is regenerated again. So this is where, where the karma is in two places, where after avidya pacha sankara, so that sankara, the intention, is karma, and the other place it is coming up is bhava. They are very similar. It's just between the two lives, yeah, because the dependent origination sequence goes across 3 lifetimes. And perceptual sequence is, every time we receive the world. So there are similar things. So of course, during this lifetime, which is in the middle, what we do is constantly receiving the world and responding to it and generating karma in this life. And this is where the path can be generated, depending on whether you're directing toward wholesome or unwholesome, or neither bright nor dark karma. So that will have to be another Dhamma talk, because you come to 8:30 already, and I didn't even get to talk most of the suttas. There were many other nice suttas. We might have a whole series on karma, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, any questions, comments, feedbacks? And there is already some. Sandika says, Dear Venerable Karunika, placing this question here for the Q&A time after your talk, thoughts and karma. Do thoughts manifest results? If you have an angry thought, but don't do anything about it, does it have a karmic consequence? Well, it does. That's the mental karma, right? So, of course, it's different, different way that operates, but the direct result is the painful feeling you experience while being angry. Because angry thought makes you angry, and the feeling of being angry itself is a painful feeling. So right there, you already generate the karma, right? Straight away. So, and of course, if that is your pattern, that's the inclination of your mind, that you always have a tendency to get angry at things all the time. Well, then, that is going to generate that kind of karma. Even though you don't act, it's different. If it breaks into speech, it's much more heavier into action, speech and action. But still, with the mind too, it's still generating karma. That's why the Buddha says, 3 types, right? By body, speech, and mind. So yeah, it does. So Simran says, does anyone have an online reference link for this sequence or dependent origination? Plenty. There's a whole chapter in the Connected Discourses, chapter number 12. Yeah, that's a good place to start. And there are many, many suttas in Majjhima Nikaya as well. You only need to search dependent origination or law of dependent arising, and you will get a whole lot. Okay, that's no problem. It's okay. All right. Anybody else? You are welcome to unmute and ask any questions or put into chat. Hi, Michael.
Yep, hi there. What's this about the cycle going through 3 lifetimes? Is that what you said?
Yes, yes. So dependent origination goes over 3 lifetimes. So because we have constantly, like until enlightenment, we have delusion, right? So delusion from the past life is what created the past life good, bad karma. For example, punyabhi or apunyabhi. So based on the good or the bad we have done in the past life, we get born. So the consciousness, the stream of consciousness enters the mother, and conception happens. The baby starts to grow. The baby, that is the nama rupa happening, and forming the being for this life. So, and in this life, we have the perceptual process happening, because we now have the 6 sense bases, and we have the craving which keeps us going. We keep looking and experiencing, receiving the world and responding to it, generating karma. And depending on how we generate that, then we create the existence for the future life. So that was the
Okay.
second life, and then based on that bhava, what we created our future life, whether we be in the human realm, animal realm, or heavenly realm, whichever realm we are going to. So
Yeah.
after that,
Okay.
next birth. So when it says
Okay.
birth, it is actually rebirth there. Yeah, and rebirth then brings on the suffering again and again. Yeah, that's how it goes.
Okay. Thank you. I get it now. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, wonderful. Anybody else have anything else to say? Yeah, from the room, people who proposed.
So karma has different values.
Sorry?
Karma has different values, like strong karma.
Oh,
generally,
absolutely. Karma is all very different. There are really heavy karma. Like if you kill your mother, kill your father, kill an enlightened being, that kinds, they're called karma, really heavy karma, right? That they are going to fruit in your very next life. These are the ones immediately, you can't avoid them. So this will stop your enlightenment as well, like that kind of really heavy karma. And then there are other different degrees of them, but also in the good side, things like jhana, like deep meditations, attainments, they are all, still karma. So yeah, they are of different sizes. And karma is how you intend, right? Two people can do seemingly from outside do the same thing, but it is the mindset that you do it with will depend the degree, the level of your karma, how heavy it is. Somebody would, give the same thing, but with incredible joy, happiness, a lot of letting go, generosity, kindness. Another person, here you go, whatever, but given the same thing, but the mind state is very different. So level of karma is different. And so karma is purified by, like karma is related to merit. That's why punyabi we say, punya means merit, right? So it's directly related, almost the same thing really. And it's also, so that is purified by the giver, by the receiver. So who you give to also depends how much karma you get, how much merit it is, and what you give, and how you give. So all of those things come into action. That is just the ones that are keeping you in samsara. But also for the practice, we can also reflect that. Maybe that's a good talk for another time, because that's what we generally mostly want. So we want to be good and be in a place that is good and conducive for the practice, but we all also want to know how to end this karma. So there will be no more rebirth, right? So that is where we want to head to. Maybe next time. Let's see whether I'm inspired enough by next week. Okay. Thank you everybody for joining, and we will probably continue a few Dhamma talks on this subject with Kamma and dependent origination and things like that. So you can also ask questions next time. All right. Take care, everybody. Okay. Bye-bye.